Hey guys, we're back. Court is not back yet, but we're back. I just wanted to go ahead and get it started. It's still showing the live stream feed, but it's not back connected yet to, well, let me dial that back. Let me see, where are we? Baby, I could be late. I hope we're not late for court. I hate being late for stuff. Okay. They might be getting ready to bring it back. The line is open and we might be right on time, y'all. Hold on. Hold on. Okay, guys. Somebody's distracting me. Okay. Um we're going to be getting started in a minute, so just kind of it could become okay. I thought it was getting ready to get started. They're probably trying to get it back and all this. With me, I just wanted to open up the line. We are ready to go. Welcome back, everyone. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe to this channel. Make sure your notifications are set so that when we do anything, you will be notified. And hit the thumbs up for me on your way in, okay? Just to give you a little bit of a recap from this morning, the prosecution rested yesterday afternoon. The defense started yesterday. They had one witness. They came in today, and I believe they've had two witnesses, if I'm not mistaken. Am I wrong? I feel like they've had two witnesses today. They had two technical witnesses that I think have really kind of been debunked or dismantled, however you want to put it. I don't think that their witnesses kind of stood muster, but I don't know. That's a subjective opinion. Um, the prosecution was really good at kind of, oh, okay. So you're an expert. Okay, this, that. They're duds. Okay. So you guys are talking. You guys are basically the defense is well on its way. They still have some witnesses. The family, of course, is in attendance. They are sitting in the first row. The family has shown a lot of strength and fortitude because I don't know that I'd be able to do that. But in the name of your child, absolutely. So the mom, grandma, who is caring for the four children of her daughter, um, is doing something that a mother never wants to have to do. And so they're in the courthouse. The prosecution, I feel like, is doing a good job. I feel like this is a very gentle trial. The prosecution is doing a really good job at chipping away at the defense. Very um not they're just dismantling it very elegantly, let's say it like that. They're not coming for anyone's throat. They're just like, oops, oh, you're not certified. How much experience do you have? You never shot the gun. All of those things. The prosecution has brought certified, experienced witnesses to really show an account, and the defense has some questionable expert witnesses that I don't know that have helped their case. But the video that the prosecution showed that was available, that the defense decided not to show, but the prosecution did, I think. That was interesting. Um, anyway, let me let you guys chat. As soon as the feed starts, I will bring it back. I'm just trying to finish handling some back office of the video that I just popped up. This video, too, when we're done this afternoon, will roll you into a live that I'll be doing later on this evening on the topic of Ernest Williams, who is currently incarcerated. By way of Fulton County. He's sitting in Cobb County for housing purposes, but he is a prisoner of Fulton County on an array of crimes. So we just finished a lunchtime update regarding that, but this afternoon we will be doing a reaction to his jail phone calls. So if you're not familiar with that topic, I have a whole entire playlist. He is on some scamming, and so if you're interested in hearing about I would say almost certified level, certified grade, uh, scammer, romancer, ladies' man, also married to Shirley Strawberry of the Steve Harvey Morning Show, get into it. Okay, guys, I'm going to give you guys a minute to chat. And as soon as this comes back on live, they bring the feedback, we will get into it. Okay. Guys, I'm just checking with another feed to see if they have it up at the moment. I think it's getting ready to come back. Hold on. Okay. It looks like they're back. I'm not sure what's going on with Law and Crime, but hold on. Let me set this up real quick. Law and Crime might be in the ladies' room or something. I don't know.
Are we ready for the jurors to come back? Yes, sir. Yes, Judge. Bring the jurors back, please.
I wish they would use their microphones. Like, this is. Somebody asked, could they turn their mics up yesterday? And he said, yeah, I can. He said, but you guys can too. And it was like, okay. So they're bringing the jury back.
Roy Bedard. And will you please tell us in general what you do for them? I am
Okay, my bad. I was playing with the speed on a video I was playing at lunchtime. So let me fix that.
law enforcement trainer as well as a product developer for public safety.
Are you also a certified law enforcement officer?
Yes.
Will you please go over your educational background for us, please?
I have a bachelor's degree in criminology and criminal justice from the Florida State University. I have a master's degree in educational psychology with an emphasis on performance and I have a PhD in that same area.
Will you please go over your law enforcement experience as well?
Yes, I began my law enforcement career in 1986 when I attended the police academy in approximately Tallahassee, just outside of Tallahassee, Florida. My first job was with the Florida State University Police Department. I stayed there until 1990, beginning in 1987. I left there and went to the Tallahassee Police Department in that same year. As a matter of fact, I think it was the next day after leaving FSU. And I continued as a full-time officer at the Tallahassee Police Department until 1996. During that time, I developed my own corporation where I was doing law enforcement training and law enforcement products. And I was forced because of time to leave full-time law enforcement. So I went into the reserve unit until 2015. And then for a very short stint, I was with the Tallahassee State College acting as a administrative advisor, which is basically offering services to the executive staff at that police department.
Have you been involved in the training of police officers?
Yes, that's what I do.
And what exactly do you do in regard to training police officers?
So I teach both privately as well as for two different police academies. I train for the Pat Thomas Law Enforcement Academy, which is at the Tallahassee State College. And I also train for the Seminole State College, doing what are known as basic and advanced, and sometimes specialized training, dealing with all manners of particularly use of force and defensive tactics. That's my specialty area.
Do you currently serve as a subject matter advisor for any entities?
I do. Here in the state of Florida, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement has commissioned the Criminal Justice Standards and Training Commission to set essentially the rules and foundations for all law enforcement and corrections officers here in the state of Florida. And I am a curriculum writer for them.
Have you ever taught at law enforcement academies?
I have, all over the world.
And do you have a home base for academy instruction?
Yes, my academy instruction, I now live in Sanford, Florida, which is why I've taken work on at Seminole Community College or Seminole State College. But my home base has been for 37 years, the Tallahassee State College.
And have you ever trained or taught seminars to other civilian groups?
I do quite often. I've taught to many self-defense classes to college-age students. I've taught self-defense seminars to public defenders, prosecutors. I've done self-defense for school teachers, things like that.
Have you ever presented or taught your original materials at professional conferences?
I do that all the time, yes.
Are you published?
I am published in a variety of vocational magazines. These are street level applied, if you will, science of use of force and defensive tactics. I have about 8 publications there. And then I also have produced publications involving how-to, for example, training manuals. I have about 12 of those.
Are you familiar with accepted protocol standards and motto policies published by professional associations on use of force decision-making and applied defensive tactics?
I am.
Have you testified to these concepts before?
Yes,
Has your knowledge, training, and experience ever been used by prosecutors?
it has.
How many times?
2 times that I can recall from the 6th Circuit and 7th Circuit.
What other times have you been permitted to testify in state court?
I don't know how many times. In total, I've testified both in criminal and civil cases over 50 times
And throughout Florida?
throughout the United States.
Have you testified in federal court?
I have, yes.
How many times?
Criminal court 1 time, and civil court, I'd be guessing, I would say it's probably more than a dozen.
And locations throughout the country as well?
Yes.
Roughly how many use of force incidents do you think you have reviewed during your course of your 37-year career?
So I continue to review them now in the capacity of a expert consultant, but I also have quite a history in reviewing these courses as a director of our training group at Tallahassee Police Department, where every use of force at some point would come to me for review. So I'd say probably thousands if I was guessing.
How many times have you been hired to provide consultation and advice on use of force, defensive tactics, decision-making bias, and survival stress for both civilians and police?
I think I'm edging in on about 500.
What's your ratio of plaintiff and defense cases?
So depending if it's civil or criminal, in criminal cases, I do mostly defense cases, probably 80-20. In a civil case, I am doing mostly plaintiff cases, probably 70-30. It changes all the time.
Have you been allowed to give opinion testimony in the following areas? Human behavior under stress,
Yes,
psychological and physiological responses to stress,
yes,
use of force decision-making.
yes,
Your Honor, we request permission from this court for Dr. Bedard to give opinion testimony in the fields of educational psychology, specifically use of force decision-making and decision-making under stressful situations.
Any voir dire or objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Without objection, I'll allow him to testify in the form and opinion in those two fields.
Thank you, Your Honor. If we can start the PowerPoint, Your Honor. Let's start off with broadly. Is there a psychological explanation for how people detect danger during uncertain situations?
yes.
And what is that? Just brief, just a very brief overview before we get into the.
When you have a stimulus in the environment, it's usually presented against what we call a background of noise. Other things are happening, and you're trying to decipher what is in fact happening. And that's known as signal detection theory, the idea that you're looking for the brightest signal in the environment to suggest what may be happening.
Okay. And can you give us an example of what you're speaking of?
I'll speak to the chart that I see up if that's
Sure,
instead of
let's
coming
start
up with a
off with-
separate example. But for example, many of the self-defense cases that I'm involved with are during that predictive period where a person is unsure about what's going to happen in the next moment. And in this case, I've just indicated perhaps somebody believes maybe you have a gun, maybe you don't have a gun. And those are the two absolutes. You either do or you don't. Now, under signal detection theory, as a theoretical framework, what you're looking for in the environment is information that suggests either there is no gun or there is a gun. So this first slide that you're looking at right here, you can see there are two distributions. Those distributions are going to have brighter or less bright signals that are going to accumulate around the mean. That's the center line. So as you see on the left, that's the belief that there's no gun. On the right, there's a belief that there is a gun. So where are the brightest signals? As you start moving away from the mean, you get into what in science we call standard deviations. But the farther away they get, obviously, the less bright the signals are, the less sure you are of something.
Can I just say, if his theory is based upon imminent danger and that the assailant could potentially have a gun, that's nothing that Susan has articulated. She never thought that Susan never articulated AJ had a gun. All she said is, I didn't know if she was going to come through the door and beat the shit out of me. She said she was going to come and kill me. She's never said, I thought she had a gun. I saw something in her hand. I heard from down the street. She's the one who's been quietly going to the gun store and creating her artillery. Are you kidding me?
That's why these are decisions during periods of uncertainty.
Now, I noticed in the top, there's loss of time / low consequences.
So what drives the decision making whenever you're making decisions in a naturalistic way, not economically speaking, where you have your stocks on the table and you're trying to decide which is the best one to put your money in, but rather things are unfolding very rapidly. You're going to probably choose the first thing that comes to mind. But as you're trying to assess between is something happening or something not happening, when you have lots of time to do it, you can contemplate. There's a different part of your brain that's actually working. It's a contemplative part. It's the frontal cortex, really, the executive functioning that we're all equipped with to be able to contemplate what's going on. And if the consequences are low, likewise, in other words, if you make a poor decision or if you make an error in your decision and the consequences are low, you can usually have less error. Because as you see here, both of these distributions are actually crossing. There is always some error. Even in science, we're happy with a 95% certainty. There's a 5% level of error, for example. So this is showing a very small amount of error when you have low consequences and you have lots of time.
How about when you have lots of time, but there's high consequences?
So consequences create anxiety, and anxiety is the thing that to explain it, I think best when I'm talking to my students, I say anxiety is that healthy respect for the unknown. Like you don't know what's going to happen. When the consequences are very, very high, anxiety tends to get very high, and anxiety works in a inverted U kind of fashion. You actually perform better with a little anxiety. When you cognitively work better, you physically work better. But at some point when the anxiety gets too high, you plateau and you start coming down the other side. That's that inverted U principle. So when the consequences are high, then the anxiety tends to be very high because you don't know what's going to happen, but you predict oftentimes the worst. So the consequences are a high driving factor when it comes to bringing together the uncertainty. As you can see, these two distributions have moved closer together. They're distinguished by D prime. Not that that matters, but that's a smaller line than the one you saw before because the beams are starting to come together. And what you'll notice most importantly is that there's a greater amount of error. And I just want to clarify error. When we talk about error, I'm not talking about conclusion error. I'm not talking about making an error in decision. I'm talking about predictive error. When you don't know what's happening, where will your error bias towards? Will it go more towards a liberal analysis? For example, I don't think there's a gun when there might be, or will it go more towards a conservative analysis? I think there's a gun when there might not be. We don't know for sure, but the error level for prediction increases.
Okay, let's go to the next one. In a situation where you have a short amount of time with low consequences.
Once again, you can see the error has increased, but the consequences have driven the error a little bit lower because even if you make a mistake, the consequences are low. When you have a little amount of time, though, I mean, the time pressure, we call it, time pressure is on, and you have to make that decision startlingly fast without perhaps having all the information that you would have if you had lots of time.
And the last one, the last graph, you have a short amount of time and high consequences.
Right. So you can see on this chart, when you have a short amount of time, in other words, something's happening very, very quickly, it's rapidly unfolding, and the consequences are very high. This is where we see D prime get really small. These two distributions come together, and the bias in this case has to be, once again, either liberal or conservative towards you don't think they have a gun or you do think they have a gun. And what we see here is the error is significantly higher than it is in all the other circumstances because of the short amount of time and the high consequences. And that just simply means that you may be making the wrong choice, but you feel like you have to make a choice at some level. So
Are they either trying to give a reason why she did this, which obviously they are, but he's just saying it. I mean, you're emotional, you're making emotionally charged decision based on a thought pattern fueled by anxiety. Haven't we been saying this for the past 2 days? How much did this guy get paid?
what we know about this, though, is that during these periods, there are what are known as type 1 and type 2 errors. So type 1s, I think we often refer to even at the high school level are these false positives that you think something is there that isn't there. And then a type 2 error would be a false negative where you don't think something is there when in fact something is there. And what we know about signal detection theory, certainly when it comes to survival, it always favors type 1. So if the time pressure is low, the consequences are high, then the decision will be towards thinking there's a gun if there's not one, over not thinking there's a gun if there is one, for I think obvious reasons.
And generally, in the most simplistic way possible, what do these models that you just explained show in regard to human behavior in certain situations?
Well, in all situations, I think any situation, whether it is considered a critical incident where something is rapidly unfolding, the consequences are very high, or it's just, the decision on, what bill should I pay today because I have only so much money. This chart applies to all different types of decisions in all different domains. It's been used for, gosh, I don't know, probably well over 80 years. Okay.
And what are the two systems of thinking that dominate judgment and decision-making in certain situations?
So your brain works differently under different conditions. Most of the time, as you are going through life, you're using system 1. System 1, as you can see here on the chart, is a very automatic, rapid, and efficient system. It was evolutionarily probably designed to get you easily through life with very low energy costs. It's a system that is somewhat non-conscious, and it has a very high capacity for what we call task switching. You can move from thing to thing very rapidly because you're not spending a lot of time thinking about stuff. It's kind of like driving to work, for example. Very few of us are contemplating every left turn and every blink, but we're just doing it kind of automatically. That's how our brains function. It also is called upon during critical periods. And the reason that that happens is because system 2, which I'll talk about now, which is the other part of your brain, a very, very controlled, very analytical, very deliberate type of thinking, is usually called upon by system 1 when there seems to be some sort of a cognitive crisis, like system 1 can't figure it out. Turns out system 2 is pretty lazy. It's usually sleeping. We don't like using it. It's high energy cost, which is why it usually is operating in the background and not out front. But interestingly, during high pressure situations, when you have somebody, for example, who's facing a very high consequence, there are neurons that are actually projecting from the limbic system, which is the emotional part of your brain, into that prefrontal cortex that attenuate the prefrontal cortex, almost turning it off. It just goes dark. And the reason for that is because system 2 is not necessary in the next moment. It's too contemplative. It takes too long to figure things out. So the example I always give is if you see, for example, I don't know, our ancestors walking across the Serengeti would see a saber-toothed tiger. The question is not, I wonder if he's hungry. That is a system 2 question. It's contemplative. There's a lot of wonder there. What happens is system 2 turns off and system 1 takes over, and it only thinks in what are known as heuristics. These are these snap decisions. Run, jump, hide, swim, whatever's available to you. So system 1 is in charge during critical incidents. It's not something that we plan for. It's just the way our evolution has designed us to keep us safe and to keep us alive.
And so many times in stressful situations, commonly people like ourselves think about the fight or flight situation. Will you speak to the jury about that?
Sure. Fight or flight situation, once again, is not something we plan for. It's not something you contemplate. It just sort of happens. So in your brain resides this little area here that's sort of an almond-shaped group of nerves and cells.
I'm sure there's Florida case law for fight or flight, presumptions, assumptions, all of those things. I'm sure that stand your ground is stand your ground, and it's a eye to eye, hand to hand, physical view. You can't say that you are in imminent danger when you can't see. All you can do is hear, and the person had the option to bust out your window. And I'm not talking about a bedroom window, a sliding window. If somebody wants in your house, they're going to bust the window. They're not going to work on breaking down a door. Like, come on, that's stupid.
Called the amygdala, and the amygdala is on constant watch. It's looking for danger from crossing the street or perhaps from walking in a dark alley, whatever the case may be. When the amygdala senses danger or potential danger, it starts alerting different parts of your brain. And if you look at the chart up here, you can see the hypothalamus out there, which is just sort of like governing everything. It's notified by the amygdala that there may be danger present. And what it does is it starts through chemical processes secreting hormones. These are called catecholamines, these stress hormones. The hypothalamus is then going to affect the pituitary gland, which you can see right there, sort of under the nose. Pituitary gland is responsible for producing more stress hormones. One of them is called ACTH, which then travels down through the bloodstream to a word probably you have heard, which is the adrenal glands. You've probably all heard of adrenaline. Adrenal glands secrete the chemicals that mobilize us for fight or flight, for running, or perhaps for fighting, depending on what the circumstances are. And this would include epinephrine, norepinephrine, and cortisol primarily.
How about during a life or death situation?
So during a life or death situation, those are the adrenal glands, by the way, just to make you aware that not all this is happening in the brain. The adrenal glands actually sit on top of the kidneys. So there's an entire holistic body response to fear, to danger. I'm sorry, I lost your question as I got to that slide.
During a life or death situation.
Okay, so during a life or death situation, that's primarily where this happens. Sometimes you end up getting secretions of cortisol in your system. I think a lot of people are aware of that. If you're into fitness, cortisol makes you fat if you don't get it out. But, you can sit at your desk and have these sort of fight-flight reactions from perhaps something you're thinking about at home, or perhaps something that's happened with your kid. You have a sort of a fight-flight response. It's a thing that wakes you up from a deep sleep. So during a life or death situation, which is what our system is designed, this HPA axis is designed to really deal with, can occur at different times, but it's most acute during actual threats, car crashes, other critical incidents like that, where you feel that cold chill down your body. That is the catecholamines secreting into your system.
Let's go to the next one. What is this, doctor?
So that is the inverted U. That is the arousal scale when you get aroused, and there's certainly many different ways of getting aroused, but we're talking about more of an anxiety arousal, something that you're facing when you're not exactly sure what's going to happen. So on the left side, you can see it says comfort, and on the right side, it's anxiety. Now, the importance of this, I think, in any type of self-defense sort of perspective is that when you're talking about the rise in comfort, it comes from an appraisal of the situation. So anxiety is caused by not necessarily the threat, but how you appraise the threat. And that's based on what you think your coping mechanisms are. And this is where we get into things like self-efficacy. If you have the coping mechanisms to deal with it, you tend to stay on the left side of the medium. You tend to stay more comfortable. That's known as a challenge, right? So sports are essentially a world of challenge. They're in the world of being comfortable. And so we see really good performance when you see anxiety starting to go up. But at some point, if your coping mechanisms can no longer deal with the challenge, it's no longer a challenge. It becomes what's called a threat. And when it becomes a threat, anxiety is now not such a positive force. It starts to degrade performance. It degrades not only physical performance, but also psychological, cognitive performance as well. So this is a curve, once again, been around a long, long time, that has to do primarily with arousal and performance and how they interact during changing situations.
And what are the chemical reactions on the body and mind
As far as
in regard to this line?
so there are changes and quite interesting changes, and there's a whole bunch of them. I mean, it's known as an allostatic load. When the cognitive load becomes too much, your body gets out of balance. And this happens because of some other processes. Your sympathetic nervous system, which is part of your central nervous system, becomes active, and it sort of attenuates the parasympathetic nervous system. And in doing that, it's causing these organ processes to work that are leaking chemicals into your body and changing really the way that you see things, the way that you hear things. It has a profound effect on memory. One of the things that we're reasonably sure of is that dangerous situations imprint differently than most calm situations. And there's a reason for that as well. You want them to be more available to you, providing you come across another dangerous situation that looks similar to the one that you faced before. So these imprints of memory become somewhat fragmented because they don't follow the normal circuits, if you will, of lying down memory in the brain. But you also get some weird things that are oftentimes detected in case studies and also empirical studies. You get, for example, tunnel vision. Your eye actually physically changes. It'll tend to elongate, for example, even if you're nearsighted. It does that because we generally, through evolution, think that threats come from the outside in. So your eye's trying to identify things at a distance. So as your eye elongates, you'll actually become tunnel vision. You'll see things very acutely that are dangerous, and everything else you don't see at all. And it is described as looking through a tunnel. For example, looking through a paper towel holder, if you can imagine that. That's kind of what it's like under very, very high arousal. I have had a police officer one time say that it was like looking through a soda straw when the arousal got high.
Sustained.
So given different circumstances, it doesn't happen in all cases, but you will experience some perceptual distortions. Some things will seem slower than they normally are. Some things will seem faster than they normally are. Some things will see farther away than they normally are, or closer than they normally are. Those are often reported as a consequence of these chemical reactions to the body and mind.
In regard to decision-making under stressful situations, does the fact that someone is significantly older than the individual that they are having a confrontation with, does that affect the individual's decision-making process?
It could. I mean, I don't think, again, it's a answer that I can say across the board, but age certainly matters. I think most people understand there are things they could do when they were younger that they wouldn't even attempt to do now. And this goes to the point of self-efficacy. This is a self-evaluation. Am I prepared to take on this task? If you're older than a person, for example, you may be confronting, you may choose avoidance over engagement because your self-efficacy tells you this is not something you're going to prevail in.
How about if you're weaker than that individual?
Same thing. Another issue of, or the perception of weakness, I should say, because of course we don't ever know what, how strong they are. We only know how strong we are. So if there's a perception of weakness on your part that you feel like, oh, I just can't take this person, right? Then what will once again happen is you'll practice avoidance over engagement because your self-efficacy is low.
How about if in the decision-making process under stressful situations, if you are an individual who has a lot of medical issues, a lot of medical infirmities, does that affect your decision-making process
Again,
under those stressful situations?
And that is the nature of self-efficacy, is it's always changing, and it can happen in an instant. For example, it doesn't even have to be a long-term medical issue. For example, let's say you're in a fight and you suddenly get thrown to the ground and you shatter your kneecap. You're not the same person you were just a moment ago. You have a medical issue. So your self-efficacy will choose a different path. It won't continue to engage, for example. It may start to just drop to the ground and cover up, or you may try to crawl away or something like that. So your defensive strategy will change according to your medical condition.
How about if you have had prior negative dealings with the individual that you're having a confrontation with?
That's very important because through something called predictive coding, we're constantly updating the world. And there's an old saying that the best way to predict the future is by knowing the past. And there's some truth to that. It's not entirely true because most things are random. But the belief system that something you've seen before will occur again goes to the nature of us being pattern-seeking creatures. We're always looking for patterns and things. So when we see something, especially emotional, that imprints itself on our memory, it stays with us for a very, very long time. Example of a burning car when you're traveling down the road. If you've ever seen a burning car on the side of the road, this is the part of the road where cars burn. That's what you'll be thinking. And it will take you going perhaps hundreds of times down that road to get rid of that memory. That's how salient it becomes.
In regard to use of force analysis and decision-making process, in addition to fear, does anger ever become a factor?
It does. Most of the time, I think it commingles with fear. Oftentimes, fear is not a great motivator for survival. Dropping to the ground and crawling into a ball is not usually keeping you alive. Oftentimes, this idea that it has to be one or the other is just not true. The cascade of emotions that occur when you're in danger can be multiple. And I will tell you that one of the greatest motivators for survival is anger, along with fear.
In regard to the decision-making process under stressful situations, does time ever feel longer than it actually is?
It does, and that goes to the perceptual distortions I talked about. There could be a situation that happens in a second, and it may seem, or a millisecond, and it may seem like it's taken a minute. But I should also say that to some people, it can seem slower. There are cases where individuals have described things as moving in slow motion, for example. So it's all depending on the individual.
In regard to the decision-making process under stressful situations, do individuals after the fact have problems remembering certain parts of the event that caused the stressful situation?
It happens all the time that we are not able to consolidate memories in the immediate aftermath of an event. So it often takes time. For example, it might take 12, 48, 72 hours for memories to consolidate. We think it happens during rest, during sleep. So it's quite common if you're trying to answer questions or have recall about an event that was a high arousal event, immediately after it, that your answers will be junk answers, because oftentimes you don't have memories and you're just trying to fill in the blanks.
In regard to the decision-making process under stressful situations, do individuals after the fact tend to either not be emotional or be very emotional?
Again,
regarding the event?
It's a cascade. I mean, you have polarization. Sometimes it's quite unusual when somebody is involved in a very dangerous and tragic event. The emotion they're giving you is exhilaration. And that's kind of strange. And I think it's alarming to the contemplative mind. But we think the reason that happens is because if you just survived an encounter, for example, every cell in your body is celebrating, right? So you're alive, you made it through. And so this has an emotional response that can be exhilaration. And then there are other times a person may feel deep depression. I mean, they have more of an understanding of what has happened. and perhaps are now moving towards system 2. The parasympathetic nervous system is starting to take over, and you're starting to have a contemplative recollection of events, and that can move you into depression. So there's no right way to act after a situation has occurred. It varies.
If I may have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Are all of the opinions that you have shared with the court and jury today within a reasonable degree of scientific and use of force analysis certainty?
They are.
Thank you. No further questions. Thank you, Don.
Thank you, sir. Do you want this slide up or no?
Yes. Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
You are not a licensed psychologist, correct?
I am not.
Nor are you a licensed psychiatrist?
No.
Not a medical doctor?
No.
And you've never counseled or treated patients in a psychological or psychiatric setting?
I have not.
The majority of your life has been involved in law enforcement,
Yes.
and you've actually developed some unique products that law enforcement officers use in their everyday duties,
I
right?
have. Yes.
Your master's degree is in educational psychology, right?
It is. Yes.
And you received that degree, I believe, in 2014.
Yes.
That degree came from the Department of Education, not the Department of Psychology, correct?
That's right.
And you basically went back to school to try to get a better understanding of how to better train law enforcement officers, right?
Well, to train everyone, I think. At that point, I was already, as I told you, I started as a self-defense instructor. But to understand what happened, why people behave the way they do under stress,
Uh, it's like it's frozen. I don't want to miss too much, but okay, here we go.
If you make the wrong decision, you could be seriously injured or seriously injure somebody else.
I would think so.
And people are put in those positions every day, are they not?
Again, yes, I don't know what people you mean. I think the context matters. If you stay home all day reading books, I don't know how many
Sure.
opportunities you have to be placed in high stressful situations. But it is quite common that individuals are forced to make some type of split decision on a daily basis.
Now, obviously, the more time that I have
Not split deception.
between seeing this immediate threat ahead of me, this car slamming on its brakes, the better ability I have to react.
I would say yes.
And the better ability I have to make a better, more reasoned and informed decision.
Yes.
If I have 50 feet or 5 seconds to react to this car slamming its brakes on ahead of me, I have a better ability to react than I have if I have an immediate threat and I have 10 feet and a half a second to react.
Well, it depends on, I would say that's true, but it depends on the speed you're traveling as well,
Sure.
of course.
Is that similar to the concept of the signal detection theory that you described earlier?
Kind of. So you're talking about almost an economic model of decision making. Like I can swerve, or I can hit my brakes, or I can go off to the curb. Those are picking the best answer between multiple versions of response that you have time to contemplate. Signal detection theory does offer that, but remember that the whole point is uncertainty. In other words, you don't have an answer on what to do. You're not really certain about what to do. So in the backdrop of uncertainty, or when you're trying to decide something is, you're not looking at brake lights coming on. You're trying to decide something unknown. It's a different experience, because what you're having to do is make decisions based on what you don't know, not based on what you do know. You're answering, or to answer your question, knowing that the brake lights come on is something you know.
But you don't know what is going to happen if I choose to swerve right or left or hit the brake. Do I have enough?
Well, I think you calculate what will happen, and I think that's fair. But again, the signal detection theory is based on uncertainty. I just don't know what I'm looking at or looking for. I'm leaning in one direction or the other. And this is why the SDTL, we'll call it shortly, is based on what we call liberal and conservative bias, because there's that error component in the prediction level.
When you mentioned.
This witness to me is inserting bias now into the conversation. I don't know if they're going to jump off the cliff with that, but there was a bias. She had a bias towards Miss Owens, based on a couple of things, race one being one of them. And she was afraid of her really for no reason other than her antagonizing her kids amongst others. So once again, the defense has really, look, I'm not here for Susan at the end of the day. Is unfortunately for Susan, she has a couple of bad lawyers. I mean, I'm not in a position to really call them bad lawyers, but I don't think they're doing her any favors with this defense. This defense is horrible.
Touched on this earlier, that in a situation where there is stress or anxiety, there's an adrenal response.
Yes.
Okay. And basically adrenaline kicks in and it floods the body and the brain.
Yes.
It makes your lungs work more efficiently.
Yes.
It causes blood vessels to send more blood to your muscles.
There's a blood shifts around the bodies based on where it's needed, but it may go to your muscles, some may go to the viscera. And this is done through the changes in blood vessels and capillaries.
And that's why we see some people do like amazing feats of strength in those situations.
Yes.
It also sends more blood to your brain.
Yes.
And that causes the brain to become more alert and focused, does it not?
Oftentimes, yes.
It is that rush of adrenaline that helps the brain make that split second decision to know what to do when that car hits you slam the brakes on.
I'm sorry, repeat your question.
It's that rush of adrenaline that causes my brain to be able to make that second decision to react to the car hit.
Right. If it's a high arousal, then it's going to be automatized. So system one will engage, and it will be because of the physiological and psychological changes that you're undergoing.
So often I do that without even thinking about it.
Well, it's automatized. You never think about it. That's the description of system one.
Would you agree? Take my situation. If I am an experienced driver, been driving for 30 years of my life, I am better equipped to assess this car ahead of me, assess the immediate threat in front of me, and make a good decision.
Yes, that's true.
I'm better equipped in that position than I am if I was a 15-year-old driver who has driven twice in my life and didn't know what to do.
Most certainly.
So your age, your life experiences factor into your ability to make a good decision.
Well, depending on whether it's a novel event or not, right? I mean, so there are some things that you've never seen before. It doesn't matter if you're 15 or 50. So, for example, if no one's ever pulled a gun on you, you may not know what to do. There's no blueprint for that. So your novel decision making is just as green as a 15-year-old who has also never had a gun pulled on him. But to your driving example,
To your example of the gun being pulled on you, what if the gun is being pulled on you and you don't know it from the other side of a locked door?
again, the assumption is if you're 50 and driving, you've probably braked a lot. You've probably had these situations occur all the time. And if you're 15, you haven't. So in that case, these are not novel situations. These are repeat situations that you formulated a plan for, and they become automatized over time.
Even people with general life experiences have experienced different forms of stress, different forms of anxiety, different forms of threats, right?
I'm not sure what you're asking me exactly. Different forms, they appraise them differently. So again, it's not necessarily what the threat is, it's how you appraise it, right? So if you and I are standing next to each other and I got a gun and you don't, and I get attacked by a bear, I'm in a better position to make a decision to engage than you are. Because
Susan felt powerful. She feels powerless in her neighborhood. She baits the ma'am to come over to her house. She baits Miss Owens to come by. Miss Owens comes by, knocks on the door as only an angry mother would, someone who found out that someone just threw a heavy skate at their kid, someone whose hardworking money tablet is missing, knocks on her door. And because ma'am feels powerless in life, she took power into her hands with these guns that she has been procuring with AJ Owen's name on it and decided to make that the day that she was going to use it. I hope the prosecution lights Susan up.
I have the
I really
co-counsel
do.
for that situation. So my appraisal might be that this bear is a challenge. Yours is no, it's a threat. You're up a tree. I'm standing here shooting at the bear. So given the same stimulus, that can be appraised very, very differently. And that is precisely what we do. We are constantly calculating our ability to manage a stimulus. And if we can manage it, once again, it is considered just a challenge. But if we can't manage it, it becomes a threat. And this is where arousal starts to see a drop off in performance.
And would you agree that general life experiences gives an older person a better ability to manage situations? Because they've seen situations differently and more often in a different context than a 15-year-old.
It's probably an empirical question. I don't know if that's been tested. I mean, there's this thing called near and far transfer. So if you do things similar to something else, you have what are called near transfers. If you do things that are way different, then you have far transfers. How those things affect novel situations, I'm not exactly sure.
You also mentioned something in your drug examination that when talking about maybe prior difficulties with somebody that future behavior is
Future behavior is predicted on past behavior. Yeah. And again,
Yes, Susan can't testify because she's on some that don't make no sense. Um, Even though she's got her story and she's sticking to it, she has no she lacks emotion, she lacks empathy, she defies reasoning. Even though she says she's pragmatic, she says she's reasonable, she's not. She lives in bias land. If there's a person who resides in the land of bias, I'm not calling her a racist, but she has made decisions about her neighbors and these children, and that's what she's going by. So I think some of those decisions she's made are built on race, but she has a very definite opinion about the children and a very definite opinion about how they should behave and a very definitive opinion on how the parents should be supporting her in her dismay for the children playing and enjoying their neighborhood, right? And because of that, she's made decisions. And also, she does have a baseline fear of interacting with people and, whatever else. And she made a decision accordingly. And that's why she's in court right now, right? So, this testimony, I'm sure the prosecution is sitting there waiting to just use it to their advantage because the psychology behind all of it is exactly what we've been talking about for the past 3 days. Susan was emotional and Susan wrote herself a check she couldn't cash, and Miss AJ came through to talk to her like a grown woman who's a mother defending her children, and Susan took the coward way out and blasted through a door and took the mother out of 4 children who really didn't do anything wrong but knock on the door. Everybody didn't go to etiquette school. We don't know how AJ knocked on the door, but even if she knocked on it loud, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, you can knock how you want to knock, right? At the end of the day, you didn't have to open up the door, and clearly you did not. AJ could have busted through the window. That doesn't make any sense that you thought she was coming in when she had a window she could have broke down to come in rather than stand there at a door that even as a almost 300-pound woman is not guaranteed she could knock down. Like, it takes a lot of force to knock down a door, of which she did not have that capability.
it may not be exactly predicted because it's random, right? So one event doesn't necessarily have any relation to the other one, but our perception of past events is what directs our decision making in future events.
You charge $300 an hour, correct?
Yes.
And about how many hours have you devoted to this case so far?
I don't know, probably 17, 15, 17.
Okay, well, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Can you redirect?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Since Mr. Buckman asked you, tell us, what is educational psychology exactly? Oh, you're good.
So when I went back to school, I already had a whole career behind me as a law enforcement officer, and my interest in further study going to graduate school was to learn about how stress affected individuals, because what we were seeing in the field is that people weren't performing the way we were teaching them to perform. I thought at first perhaps I would find the answer in military studies or something like that, but as I did further investigation, what I found out is this idea of anxiety and stress is most profound in sport psychology, sport exercise and performance. Why is that? Because we don't have people in lab coats standing on the battlefield. We don't have people in lab coats standing, in the neighborhoods when the police show up, but we do have people with lab coats in the laboratory working with athletes. We have them on the gridiron, we have them on the diamond, and they're seeing how people perform when they get very high levels of stress. We just had the Olympics, great example. You see people, we call it choking under stress. And so all of that data is found in educational psychology, not clinical psychology. I wasn't interested in working with people who were unwell, people who had disorders. I was interested in working with people who were very well, like champion athletes, police officers, SWAT team members, Navy SEALs, things like that. So I drifted towards educational psychology over clinical psychology because I think it's far more relevant in understanding the issues that I talk about.
Mr. Buckman spent a lot of time with you talking about an individual slamming their brakes in that situation. What is the difference between an individual under stressful situation where, they have to slam their brakes to not die, to not get in an accident, to not damage their vehicle or something else? What is the difference between that type of stress and the type of stress that you see in use of force analysis and how that affects your decision-making process?
A lot of times in use of force, not always, but a lot of times the decision is terminal. It's not just going off into the ditch and having to call AAA, but it's actually terminal. In other words, if you don't make the right decision, you can die or perhaps you can kill someone else. So unfortunately, I would say that we don't have a lot of information, empirically speaking, on how people exactly behave when they're under this this type of arousal, because you can't shoot at people and see what they do. But we do have a lot of information from the field, from law enforcement, from the military about those things. And so it's sort of a separate category from the everyday events that you see, like driving your car. That's not the kind of arousal. You don't get as aroused as, for example, somebody sticking a gun in your face and threatening to kill you. So they're viewed slightly differently than everyday events. The idea that you have to make split decisions, can be whether or not you decide to send your camper child off to camp or not. That might be a split second decision that you make as part of a heuristic. But there are certainly different gradients of these split decisions, and I usually deal with the most extreme.
So it's apple and oranges.
I'd say they're relative. I don't know if they're apples and oranges. They're both fruit. We'll say that. And, they're certainly different kind of fruit.
Different types of fruit.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Buckman spent some time speaking to you about general life experiences, but it depends on the type of experiences that an individual has, right?
Yes.
And statistically, do a lot of people have experience in a use of force analysis?
Analysis, no. Or do you mean the use of force situation?
I'm sorry, use of force situation.
They really don't. I mean, considering the number of the amount of violence that we have in this country, I think is well known. But we have a lot of people in this country too. So the statistics of it break down to very, very few people having any experience with violence, and even fewer with deadly violence.
If I may have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
No further questions. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions?
Can I have one more? Your Honor?
Sure.
No questions, Your Honor.
You excused?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Have a nice day, sir.
Your Honor.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, I'll let you know where we're going from here, okay? Thank you. right, the jury is out of the courtroom. Are there any other additional witness for the defense?
No, sir.
All right. Ms. Lawrence, have you discussed with your attorneys the decision regarding whether or not you will testify or not?
Yes, I have.
Do you need any additional time to discuss that decision with them?
No.
Have they forced you to make a decision in any way?
No.
Have you made a decision on your own?
Yes, I have.
Can you tell us what that decision is?
I am not going to testify.
You've made that decision freely and voluntarily?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to bring the jurors back in. and then you
Is
guys-
she getting on the stand? Farrah was talking to me. What?
So what I'll do is, it's 1:30 now. I'm going to tell them that, given the schedule and the length of closing
Susan wants to
everyone has suggested it may be, that it would be too late to send them out this afternoon, because honestly,
Oh,
be going out conservatively at 4:30, maybe later. And I don't want to put any sort of pressure on them to make a decision fast or slow. So what we'll do is I'll let them go for the afternoon, and then we'll start tomorrow morning. You told me you think a couple hours for yours?
Judge, I'm going to try my best to maybe get it to an hour and a half.
I'm not going to limit anybody, because the nature of the case, there's no reason to limit anybody. I always caution people, going too long can sometimes be detrimental. Going too short can be detrimental. So please just try to govern yourselves accordingly.
Yes, sir.
If you need the boards, let me know ahead of time, and I'll be happy to turn them on for you.
I will be.
Any evidence you need, make sure you have that available to you.
Yes, sir.
If there's anything else you need, please let me know. So I'll bring them back in, and then I'll let them go for the evening, and we'll have them here. What time do you guys want to start tomorrow?
9 a.m. is fine.
Okay. I mean, like I said, I'm on duty, so I have a few things to do in the morning before I come in court, and I do stuff during lunch. But luckily, duty ends at noon for me tomorrow. So a week of being on call. Nevertheless, I'll just inform them of the schedule. That means they'll probably be going into deliberation sometime around lunch. I'll give them plenty of time to make a decision. And I'll let them know that, hey, while you're deliberating, no one can contact you. But also let them know that they can take as long as they want in deliberations. It's up to them completely. All right? So that's the only instructions I'll give them. But you want to rest before that, right? You want to rest now?
Yes.
Okay. Bring him back.
Not sure if the court mentioned it this morning, but for the record, Ms. Lorincz is uncuffed, wearing the same.
All right, the jury is out of the courtroom. Are there any other additional witness for the defense?
No, sir.
All right. Ms. Lawrence, have you discussed with your attorneys the decision regarding whether or not you will testify or not?
Yes, I have.
Do you need any additional time to discuss that decision with them?
No.
Have they forced you to make a decision in any way?
No.
Have you made a decision on your own?
Yes, I have.
Can you tell us what that decision is?
I am not going to testify.
You've made that decision freely and voluntarily?
okay. So they asked her if she wanted to testify. She said no. The defense is resting their case. They did a horrible job. But we don't know how the prosecution feels. They'll have closing arguments tomorrow. I think we're done with court. You guys, thank you. Someone just sent a cash. I don't know if it's probably from my office assistant. Girl, my God. Seriously? Have a seat, ma'am. Okay. I'm digging in my purse to see what cash I had. Now I gotta go to the stash situation and go get her money. Y'all are spoiling my child. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, but y'all don't have to do that. Sis sis is let me tell you something. Y'all spoiling her because ma'am's already spoiled. But thank you so much. You guys are very sweet and I appreciate that very much.
The reason we're going to recess now is because of the time that it may take for the parties to present their closing arguments, and for me to give you the instructions means you wouldn't be getting this case till very, very late in the afternoon. I don't want to put any pressure on you regarding how long you need to deliberate. When you deliberate the case, you'll have as long as you want, but I don't want to start at 5 o'clock p.m. Okay. So you should have it probably around lunchtime tomorrow, somewhere in that range. Okay. Of course, even tomorrow you can deliberate for as long as you want. We're just going to be starting a lot earlier for your convenience. I want to remind you that the case is not over, so you can't begin to deliberate at any point now. You still have to have the closing arguments and the instructions on the law. Once you hear all of that, you go back for the final time. You'll take your notebooks with you, and then you can begin to deliberate the case. You're still under the rule. Please don't let anyone say anything to you about this case. Please don't look up anything about this case. Please don't talk about this case at all. If when you come in the morning, I'm going to give you each a number for you as a juror. So if any time during your deliberations you need to ask any sort of questions or anything else, you'll be identified by your number. Okay, it's going to be just like school. I'm going to hand you a piece of paper with your name and a number on it. And then you'll do everything by, say, juror number 2, what have you. But if you need an emergency number tomorrow morning in case you can't go 3 hours without a phone, or however long it may take, I don't want to say 3 hours, but however long it may take to deliberate, please let us know. We'll provide a number to you. Okay. With that, you're excused for the day. Have a very nice day. Thank you. Leave your
Okay.
here, please.
Okay, I'm going to say
Your
this.
lunch is about tomorrow.
Okay, I guess they're going to talk about a few procedural items.
I now instruct the circumstances must
I'm going to say this. I am not mad at this trial one little bit. This trial has been very it's been speedy and I'm not mad at the 3 days situation. I'm just hopeful for the family to get their healing and their justice. I mean, even if we've had a little key or two, this is certainly not a laughing matter. But we're discussing the case, but I really hope for justice for the family, period. But my opinion really is the defense sucked, but we'll see. Yeah, it ain't no Fulton County here, but sir, Judge Robert Hodges, I like him. He's a class act. He seems to be a good guy, very mild temperament, and that's very much appreciated. He's not, you know what I mean? He's not too much of this and too much of that. He's very calm and seems to be quite fair. So we're going to see how this pans out, but I am not mad at this schedule and I am not mad about them handling this business expeditiously, right? I just hope and pray that justice prevails, because this was not a stand your ground. I'm sorry. I'm afraid of where I chose to live, and I picked a fight that I couldn't, that I wasn't ready to actually be in, and I made a bad decision. Um, does that get 30 years? I don't know. Um, I you know I don't know if it gets 30, but I don't know what's going to happen. I do hope that the family gets justice. Anyway, I guess let's listen to a few of the little closing remarks.
be
But
proved beyond that must be proved before Susan Lawrence may be found guilty of manslaughter. You want a period after manslaughter.
Right, because there are no lesser included, and I don't want them to get confused.
No, I appreciate that. Did you read it out loud and find that, or
I did.
see?
And then there's the little paragraph paragraph in italics, the defendant in this case has become a witness, you should apply the same rules. I think we need to take that out.
Right. Taking that out. And that is under,
3.9.
3.9. That'll be taken out, and we'll keep in 3.9A. Yes, ma'am?
Yes, that's it.
What else?
That was it.
Okay, so, what we'll do, Mr. Smith, whoever sent me this copy, I think that was you, correct?
Yes.
Send a copy to, Ms. Sizemore, if that's who's getting it, whoever on the defense is getting it. And then once you guys tell me everyone's good on this, then I'll have Ms. Matthews make the copies,
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
okay? And, I appreciate it. Thank you, Zach. That'll be, it for today. Thank you, everybody. Have a
Thank
nice
you,
day.
Judge.
Thank you.
Okay, this is what I think. I do not think that the defense was able to prove. So they don't have to prove anything, right? But I don't think that the defense was able to deliver fear, danger. I don't think they delivered danger. I don't think that they delivered stand your ground. I don't think that they delivered a reason why Susan was afraid other than she was afraid. She was afraid to get her ass beat. I don't think they gave a good reason. I don't think they explained stand your ground. Did you hear them explain stand your ground? Maybe they'll do that in the closing arguments. I didn't hear them explain stand your ground. I didn't hear stand your ground. I didn't hear from the psychology expert as to why 1 and 1 equaled 2. I didn't hear any of that. If that's what they were hoping to give a reason why ma'am used deadly force and why she made the decision she made, I didn't hear that. I'm sorry. If they would have said it, I'd have been like, "Ooh, oh my God, I didn't hear a damn thing." And the testimony got flipped a couple of times against them. So I don't know. Why is Susan not in handcuffs? Because if the jury was still there, well, on trial day, just like Sarah, you have a right to kind of not look like you've been in custody the whole time. That's why she's not in a jumpsuit. You know what I'm saying? So she gets to be in regular clothes because she is innocent until proven guilty, and there is a certain amount of prejudice that could be involved, or people can judge you a certain way if they see you in your jumpsuit and shackles. Okay. So that was some of what was litigated, or I guess was that litigated, discussed in the hearings last week for Sarah Boone, which you'll see her tomorrow at the table and not in the jury box. They probably, because it absolutely wasn't anything close to stand your ground. Well, I'm sure the prosecution is going to explain it when they do their closing remarks. I hope they just bundle it all. I hope they really do a good job delivering that this was not that. And I'm glad they showed the video, because the detective was like, ma'am, that doesn't make any sense. that don't make no sense what you did. Like, we're not hearing that. And I hope that they come with those nice big pictures, like family pictures, and show that this was a mom who worked hard, took care of her kid. She had a man in her life that loved her. She has a family who loved her. Like, she's missed right now, and forevermore. these people will have a hole in their heart for what's missed, right? And and that's it, that's all. So I hope that justice prevails. You guys, this has been fun. I enjoyed it very much. I enjoy y'all's company immensely. I'm going to take a break now, handle some things with Farah, and then we'll be back. We might not even be 8, 9 o'clock tonight. We might be earlier because now we got some time because Marion County is handling that business and we're not busy with this all day. So let me go ahead, shut this down, get myself together. I'm going to handle some business with Farah. I appreciate y'all spoiled her. And what you gonna do with your cash, babe?
I'm gonna save some.
She's a little bit. She's a saver. She a little stash. What else are you gonna do with it? Come to the mic. What are you gonna do with your money? How much did mommy give you already?
I'm gonna savor it.
You're gonna savor it. She's good. She's doing like the cash in hand fingers type thing. She's doing like money in my hand type thing. Okay. You're going to savor it. Okay. And what do you say, even though you typed a nice answer, what do you say to the nice aunties who spoiled you? Oh, she's dropping some manicure. Oh, let me stop. You dropping some manicure emojis?
Okay.
You said auntie?
Okay.
She said auntie. She said auntie. Say
Okay.
okay, say thank you and
Thank you.
can you believe she's 13? Like she's not just on YouTube. Like she doesn't have like a YouTube sign on like dirty. She has one legit. Sis is 13. Like she actually gets to have a sign on now. She's 13. Like she's always been on a guest account. She's either on a guest account, my husband's account. Like she now legit has her YouTube sign on. Okay. So, and then I told her I was going to give her a rent. She's like, oh my God. Oh, ma'am is an official teenager. Isn't that sweet? Okay. You guys, thank you very much. I appreciate y'all. This was fun. We'll resume this tomorrow and we'll see what happens. We'll just think positive and say, look, say a prayer for the Owens family, one way or the other. This family does need positive thoughts and prayer. So lift them up, however which way you do. There's children tonight. There's 4 children who are missing their mom and going through a very difficult time because this has been going on for over a year, and their grandmother has had to pick up where mom left off and having to be everything to these children. And that's a very difficult job. So even on some support and sending love out there through the airwaves, send some love to the Owens family because they definitely need it, regardless how this whole entire thing turns out. And for the community of the homes, the for the neighborhood, I hope that they do feel and get some justice because this was not a happy situation. One of their beloved neighbors passed away on that patio, and somebody's renting that property now. And you know what I mean? Do you imagine renting a property and all of a sudden you get a knock from maintenance and them asking you, can we take some pictures in your house? Because we need, this was a crime scene. I would be like, look, I'm breaking the lease. I'm out of here. You didn't tell me before I moved in that this was just a damn crime scene, right? Bad. Just, all the way around. Anyway, guys, you guys have a wonderful afternoon. I will see you guys a little bit later. If you missed the video earlier, we have some theories on the discovery from yesterday. So go catch that video for me. Make sure to hit the thumbs up, share if you would. Shares matter. So if you have Instagram, Facebook, all of the things, share me out. That helps me get to other people who would be interested in this content. Chelsea Sunshine, hey boo boo, thank you so much for continuing to support. I appreciate you so much. You guys are definitely some riders, and I appreciate all of you guys sticking with me for so long. Even if today's your first day, don't let it be your last day. But many of you have shared many a live stream and some watch time with me. And I'm really forever grateful and appreciate y'all supporting this content and channel very much, guys. Okay, you guys take care. I will see you guys later on these YouTube streets. This will roll you into the next live. Hit the notify me, hit the thumbs up, and I will see you when I go live. Take care.